It's the Wiltfong Whip Around with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Monday, July 15th, and we got a new number one. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Now, over the weekend, Alabama jumps Ohio State for the number one spot in the On3 industry rankings. They landed a pair of five-star commitments, wide receiver Caleb Cunningham out of Mississippi and Ty Haywood, the big-time offensive tackle, out of Texas. Now, we're going to cover it all today, but before we get going, make sure you guys are subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel, whether it's the 5-Star Flex, the Inside Scoop, the Wiltfong Whip Around. We got you covered. Make sure you guys are subscribed. All right, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong and Alabama surging past Ohio State for the number one class in America. Steve, Bama has a lot of commitments right now. What is the most impressive position group on that Bama commitment list?
It was only a matter of time as we've been projecting Caleb Cunningham and Ty Haywood into Alabama's class for quite some time now. And offensive line, wide receiver, Alabama's recruiting those positions as well as anybody in the country. But the way that they're recruiting at the point of attack on the offensive side of the ball is really special. And Kalen DeBoer and this year staff, they're going to have a lot of turnover on the offensive line over the next 2 years. They need ready-made guys that can come in and play to the standard and push that room immediately. And I think they've done that this cycle. When you look at Ty Haywood, the five-star offensive tackle, has as much trade as anybody at the position in the country to beat Oklahoma, to beat Texas A&M, Florida State, among others. That was one of their most significant recruiting wins this cycle because Alabama was a program that was considered a dark horse, the childhood dream school that trailed A&M, Oklahoma, and others coming into the official visits. He takes his trip to Tuscaloosa. It was a game changer. Now he's in the class, one of the jewels for Kalen DeBoer, Coach Cap and company. You put him alongside Jackson Lloyd. He's On3's number one ranked player in California this cycle, a top 32 recruit, which means right now we project him to be a five-star at the end of the cycle, number 26 player overall. He's a three-sport athlete, nimble-footed with great bend, explosive quickness. You just absolutely have to love the combination of Ty Haywood and Jackson Lloyd as your future offensive tackles. And then on the interior, you have our number one interior offensive lineman in the country at On3, a five-star recruit in Michael Carroll, who chose to play for Alabama over Michigan and Penn State, among others. He's a Penn State legacy. His dad played linebacker for the Nittany Lions. He's from the Chicagoland area, but now living in Pennsylvania. To beat Michigan, to beat Penn State, and get Michael Carroll down to SEC country is another significant win for Alabama. He's planning to hopefully be back on Alabama's campus next weekend and then also slated to return for the Georgia game during the fall. So those three guys are elite. Then you have Micah DeBose, who they beat LSU and Ohio State on, and Mal Waldrop, who they beat Clemson on. Those are the five players committed to Alabama this cycle on the offensive line. Nobody is going to recruit a better set of players at the offensive line position in the country in this 2025 cycle.
Yeah, it's really come together for Bama in the trenches. Very Nick Saban-esque is when he arrived in Tuscaloosa. He made it a priority to upgrade the trenches, and that's where Kalen DeBoer and his staff are spending a lot of time. Now, there's still a couple key targets still left on the board for Alabama. You got guys like AKD or Ty Jackson, Justice Terry. I mean, Alabama's not done yet, are they, Steve?
No, they'd like to add another dynamic receiver. There's certainly been a standard at wide receiver at Alabama over the last decade when some of the best to ever play college position or college football at the position have played in capstone there. And they add Caleb Cunningham to Letseer Brooks. Caleb Cunningham, 48 catches, 1,138 yards, 14 touchdowns as a junior. To Letseer Brooks out of New Jersey, he had over 1,200 yards receiving in a state record 22 touchdowns as a junior. He's been in the end zone 51 times in his prep career. Alabama wants to add one more elite guy. You have Derek Meadows, who's announcing his college decision this weekend. Alabama's in the top three with LSU and Notre Dame. And then you have Khalik Lockett, who's going to make his decision on August 7th. And the intel says Alabama's in the top two there with Texas. Now, with Derek Meadows, Alabama they may be trending down a little bit for him right now, but there's a week to go going into his college decision this weekend. LSU was the hot team last week. Notre Dame was the hot team most of his process. They're trying to battle back. Khalil Lockett, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him following Meadows' announcement, because I don't know if Alabama has room for both. So they miss on Meadows. They turn it up even more for Lockett. They land Meadows. I think that opens things up for Texas. And then you also have Texas A&M, LSU, Florida State in there for Khalil Lockett. So Alabama, they want to finish strong at receiver. I like where they stand with A.K. Deere, the number 2 running back in the country. On 3 RPM is on Alabama. Feel great about that forecast. They're also in the thick of it for Ty Jackson, as you said, the number 1 linebacker in the country. He's going to be at Florida next weekend. And then Harry Dalton's a running back committed to USC that they also hosted during the fall.
So I know we're sitting here. We're only just past the midway point. I know people in the comment section are saying, why are you crowning Bama? We're not. Alabama just jumped into the lead right now. There's still some other teams that are battling for that number 1 spot when it's all said and done. Alabama, Ohio State, there's a couple others. Who do you think truly has a shot to finish number 1 in the 2025 cycle?
Well, you look at 2 schools right away. We've already talked about Alabama, but you got Ohio State, of course. David Sanders Jr., number 1 offensive tackle in the country, number 2 player overall per the On3 industry. Ohio State's on his short list. If they land him, you could see them surging back into that number 1 spot. They're in position to flip Malik Autry from Auburn. Not saying that's going to be an easy one for them, but certainly they're square in that one. So they're in the thick of it for a few of these elite guys moving forward as well. Messiah Delhomme is a defensive back that has Ohio State on his short list, 4-star recruit. But David Sanders Jr. is a key one for them. Georgia's got Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin, the 2 5-star defensive linemen. They'll be trying to swing a spatula this fall on some flips, maybe some guys that they lost early in the process. So those are the 3 schools you look at. And then you also have Oregon, right? They have a bunch of 5-stars still on the board, from Trey McNutt to Jonah Williams. Michael Terry III is going to be back on their campus next weekend as well. So Oregon, those are the 4 schools in the hunt. Alabama's the favorite right now to bring it home. But if those other schools hit big, we could have some more movement atop the standings.
Yeah, there's going to be some movement, because if you just look at what's happening this week, it is decision week, July 15th through the 21st. We're going to recap. We're going to preview, I should say, some of these monster commitments that could reshape not only the top 10, but the top 5 potentially. So let's start with July 15th. That's today. We're going to get it popping in the state of Texas. Decaney, Texas it is. Nick Towson and wide receiver Tanook Hines, they are both making their commitments. Nick Towson, one of the top tight ends in America. Let's start with him. Is this going to be a great day for the Longhorns with Nick Towson?
I think so. I'm projecting him to be in Texas's class. He took official visits to USC, Texas A&M, Alabama, but Texas is the program trending hard, according to sources with knowledge of the recruitment. The Longhorns have the nation's number 16 class. This is one of the most dynamic, fastest tight ends in the country. Would be a big pickup for Steve Sarkisian and company as they continue to try and play at the caliber they have been on offense. He would be someone that could be very explosive for them, a guy that's a big play waiting to happen with his skill set.
And Tanook Hines, he's a big play wide receiver as well, teammates with Nick Towson at Decaney High School. Tanook, is he going to stay in state or is he going to head out?
No, I like USC over Notre Dame and Texas, among others, right now for him. USC's putting together a sneaky good receiver class. They have Corey Sims in the fold that they lured away from Mizzou and others. And then Romero Ison is one of the most explosive, one of my favorite prospects in the country that is definitely not a household name. He's from Baltimore, Maryland. He's committed to USC, been in the fold since April. Dynamic player. If they're able to add Tanook Hines, which I think they will, to Sims and Ison, that'll be one of the Big Ten's best receiver hauls this cycle.
All right, July 17th. Now, this is the big one that a lot of people have had marked on their calendars for weeks, ever since DJ Pickett set the date. He's going to come off the board, and early on, when he first set the date, all the picks started going in for Oregon. We saw the Ducks trending. They felt really good about where they stand. But over the last 5-7 days, Miami has picked up steam. I talked to you. I talked to Chad Simmons. All the experts here at On3, everybody is saying, watch out. Do not sleep on the Canes. Now, here we are, just about 48 hours out. What do you think on DJ Pickett? Do you have a prediction?
This could be a special week for Miami at the cornerback position as they recruit DJ Pickett, who's committing on Wednesday, and then Jabari Antoine, who will announce his decision on Saturday. Miami is the number 10 class in the country. Where will they be next Sunday when you're hosting Inside Scoop, and then Monday when we're talking Wiltfong Whip Around? So hit like and subscribe for notifications on future shows. But talking to a source this morning, again, Miami is in the thick of this one for DJ Pickett. It's kind of a back and forth, right, with Oregon and Miami and these conversations and what these programs can do for these young men on and off the field. Obviously, DJ Pickett and his family grew up Miami fans. They've been around that program a lot. His cousin, Booker Pickett Jr., is a true freshman at Miami. But Oregon, the trajectory of the program, when they get out to Eugene, the family, it says it's a long trip, but when they get there, they forget about the travel. They just feel at home. They love the opportunities at Oregon beyond Nike, just what all the connections that program has with people off the football field, and Dan Lanning, the defensive philosophy, his track record. These two programs are doing a great job. LSU rounds out the final three, maybe not a better relationship than the one that they have with Corey Raymond, and LSU is going to go down swinging for him as they push for a top 5 recruiting class. But it could be a special week for Miami with DJ Pickett and Jabari Antoine. And Josh, DJ Pickett put out his decision date 2 weeks before his decision. And we were talking a lot about Oregon at the time, but you and I both acknowledged 2 weeks is a lot of time. And it's certainly been that for Miami to thrust themselves in here and make things very interesting down the stretch for the Ducks. But Oregon's been closers too in the Lanning era. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think Mario Cristobal would love to beat Dan Lanning here on the trail with him coming from Oregon to Miami.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the recruiting prediction machine here on On3, and none of the picks have changed for DJ Pickett. So what's going to happen over the next 48 hours? Do you think that we will see a slide in momentum on the recruiting prediction machine, or is this just smoke and rumors?
No, I think it's possible that RPM favors the U by Wednesday, but there's some big conversations still to be had in this recruitment going into Wednesday.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Now, Thursday, July 18th, defensive lineman Jarquez Carter, one of the top available in the state of Florida, one of the top available defensive linemen, and he's being recruited by everybody in the state of Florida, but also Penn State and Ohio State. Do you think in the end, when Jarquez Carter makes his announcement on Thursday, he stays in state, or can Penn State or Ohio State come in and nab him?
I think that the in-state programs are intriguing in this one. UCF is a school that I think is one that should not be slept on in this recruitment. And obviously he's been on Florida's campus a ton. So those in-state programs have put in a lot of equity into this recruitment.
All right. And then on July 19th, another 5-star commitment. We're going to see safety Trey McNutt make his announcement, and all signs, it seems like it's a wrap to Oregon, but I know that there's a couple teams that are not going to go down without a fight here.
Yeah, I talked to a source on Sunday and then also talked to Trey on Sunday. I get the sense 70% Oregon, 30% Texas A&M. I still think the Ducks get it done, but Texas A&M doing what they can to change the trajectory of that recruitment. Josh, those programs have battled quite a bit on the trail in this cycle as they both try and sign top 10 recruiting classes. You talk about Texas A&M. They've had some big wins over Oregon so far. So Oregon trying to flip that script. A&M was able to go out and win for Hussan Longstreet, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, Adonis Curry, a blue chip corner from California, Noah McHale, linebacker from California, Marco Jones, an edge rusher from California, all had the Ducks and A&M as finalists. They're all in the class for the Aggies, but Oregon trying to change the way that those recruitments have gone. They lead for Trey McNutt, in my opinion, and they have the momentum for Jonah Williams, the number 1 safety in the country. Texas A&M led a month ago for him. They're trying to get that momentum back, in my opinion, as Oregon's the hot team for Jonah Williams.
Does Trey McNutt's decision, even if he ends up going to Oregon or Texas A&M, does that impact Jonah Williams at all?
I don't think so. Trey McNutt is a true safety, and some view him as the number one safety in the country. And that's because Jonah Williams is just a Swiss Army knife on the back end, can play multiple positions in the secondary, could even come up and give you some snaps at linebacker with his skill set. He's one of the unique body types and athletes. He's just a guy that he kind of reminds of Kyle Hamilton with this skill set and the versatility that he has on the back end. Jonah Williams shouldn't be worried about any player. He's on the field in a variety of ways, doing a lot of things, erasing mismatches. He can rush the passer. He forces turnovers. There's just a lot going on with Jonah Williams. Trey McNutt's that true safety. Oregon would be lucky to have them both. The Aggies would be lucky to have them both. These programs are doing what they can to sign both 5 stars.
A&M and Oregon throwing haymakers out there on the recruiting trail. And then on July 20th, that's Saturday, right here on the On3 Recruits channel, subscribe. Jabari Antoine is going to make his decision. Now, last week we talked about him, and you mentioned that there was some confidence in Tallahassee, but talking to you over the last couple of days, are you maybe leaning a little bit toward Miami as we're just about 5 days away from this announcement?
Well, I think there's some confidence around Coral Gables that they can get that done too. If you can land DJ Pickett and Jabari Antoine, who's going to sign a better combination of corners this cycle? Miami has a chance to do it. Top 10 class for Miami right now, but Mario Cristobal and company, they want to be in the top 5. That's where they were last cycle. They have the names on the board to do that this cycle. They just hit on one of their top receivers over the weekend, Dalen Upshaw, a 4-star from Alabama. They want to finish the class out big at that position too. Jamie French is a guy that they've been trending up for. They're still recruiting guys like Joshua Moore, who's committed to Florida. I know Dallas Wilson just doubled down on his commitment to Oregon, but Miami's still going to try and poke away at that one. And then Vernell Brown III, he's committing this weekend. Florida's the on 3 RPM favorite, but Miami's doing what they can to hang around with him as well.
All right. Now, Derek Meadows is going to announce. He's going to announce on July 20th. He was supposed to announce on July 13th, which was this past Saturday, but about 24 hours out, he said, whoa, we got to wait a week. What does that mean? Because at the time, a lot of people thought LSU was maybe the favorite to land Derek Meadows over Notre Dame. Of course, Alabama, Michigan also involved. But does this Derek Meadows delay help anyone?
Yeah, it absolutely helps Notre Dame because I think I was one of them on July 13th. If Derek Meadows was going to announce his college decision, he's going to end up in the class for the Bayou Bengals, and he still might. But Notre Dame, they've been on Derek Meadows the longest. He's one of their most prized targets, regardless of position, this cycle. And I think they've shown Derek Meadows and his family how much of a priority he is for them over the last week with some of the dialogue that they've had and some of the opportunities he would have at Notre Dame. So I think the Irish are right there in the thick of it with LSU down the stretch. Alabama seems to maybe be fading, but as we've seen now with Derek Meadows' recruitment here late in the process, as programs are making their final phone calls, the momentum can change at any point. But LSU, Notre Dame, 1 week to go. We'll see what happens. LSU's former offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock, now in South Bend. Meadows and his family think that means a lot for receivers, getting more opportunities with Notre Dame down the road. They've been a tight end, running back heavy offense, but Mike Denbrock being at Notre Dame after coming from LSU where they had the top offense in the country, Notre Dame pointing to that, where LSU pointing towards just the run of receivers that have come out of Baton Rouge, Brian Kelly's track record, Cortez Hankton, all of that. So LSU, they had the momentum coming into the week of July 13th. Notre Dame trying to get it back going into July 20th decision.
All right, now we're going to talk offensive lineman Cortez Smith here in the next segment, so we'll cover that. But he's a July 20th, another July 20th. It's going to be another busy Saturday for commitments. Defensive lineman Floyd Buchard comes off the board. Now, he's from South Florida, but is he going to stay in state?
I don't think so. I think that USC and Oklahoma are the programs to watch. I know we said recently Miami, but I think that as Miami continues through its process in 2024. They want to see more things from Floyd. I think Oklahoma and USC are the programs I'm watching. USC was the major team to beat coming out of his official visit. Oklahoma grabbing some of that momentum late in the process.
Yeah. All right. Now, then on Sunday, this is the last commitment of the week, and it's a big one. Wide receiver Vernell Brown III, he's going to make his decision right here on the On3 Recruits channel. Hit subscribe for that. He's going to do it on Sunday, and all signs point to the Gators. We haven't talked a whole lot of Florida Gator recruiting this summer compared to last summer when they were the kings of June. They were landing commitments in July. I mean, we were talking Florida Gators all summer. Could Vernell Brown III kind of be the spark the Gators need to get recruiting going?
I think the spark Florida needs to get recruiting going is to have a good start to the season. But Vernell Brown III will be a nice recruiting win this summer. Obviously, two-time legacy recruit that's probably always pictured himself playing his college football inside the swamp where his dad played. His grandfather attended school at Florida. He's been around that program so much. You know what it does for you on the field, off the field. Ohio State at one point I thought was the leader. Miami and Florida State are the other finalists, but Vernell Brown III has always loved the Gators, and with that, we love Florida's position. Now, Florida, they hosted a lot of top targets this spring and summer. These are guys just keeping Florida warm, even if they're committed elsewhere. Guys like Hilton Stubbs, perhaps. The number one linebacker in the country, Ty Jackson, he's going to be back at Florida next weekend for a big recruiting weekend in Gainesville, but these guys want to see Florida play. And you and I, we talk about it. I feel like we talk about it every show, but that Florida-Miami game to open the season is a hell of an opportunity for Billy Napier and his staff to really start grabbing some major momentum on the recruiting trail and then build off it throughout the season. I know they like the way they've attacked the portal. I know they like the way Graham Mertz has continued to develop inside their building. You know, there's a lot of people outside Gainesville that think that this is going to be a rough year for Florida, but I think internally there's a lot of confidence that they are going to start showing people that this program really is on the uptick. And if that indeed happens, Florida's going to be in for some major flips and some big recruiting wins during the season. But I think going into the season, they got a great chance to get a big recruiting win in Vernell Brown III.
All right, let's talk about it, guys. July 15th through the 21st, we're going to see a massive amount of names come off the board. We just previewed a bunch of them. Let us know, comment section below. Where do you think these guys are going? Do you agree with Steve or do you disagree? Let us know, comment section below. All right, now we're going to talk some offensive linemen because with Bama landing five-star Ty Haywood, we're getting low on available impact quality offensive linemen. So let's play some offensive line dominoes. And, of course, I'm going to need the whiteboard for this. All right, Steve, get you on the whiteboard. You know, Chad Simmons has done the whiteboard a couple times, but we haven't gotten you to the whiteboard, so let me explain it real quick. Here are some of the top available offensive linemen in America that are still uncommitted, and these are simply teams that need a stud offensive lineman. And as we can see, there are more teams in need than there is supply, so these are very valuable pieces left on the board. So, Steve, let's start at the top with David Sanders. When it comes to David Sanders, we'll start with who's involved and then wrap it up with where you're leaning.
Well, Ohio State and Tennessee are the two programs that I think are in the best shape for David Sanders, but you also have Nebraska in his top four and Georgia in his top four. Georgia is in the mix for a few of these guys on the board, as people will learn as we continue to go through these names. So we expect Georgia to finish strong at the point of attack. Ohio State, they already have Carter Lowe in the fold at offensive tackle, and Tennessee has one of the top interior guys, Douglas Utu, in the fold, as both these programs try and land difference makers as they continue to make championship pushes for year to come. I think everyone knows by now where I stand on David Sanders Jr. I'm giving an inch to Ohio State, but not ruling anyone out. I think he'll take some visits next week, or at least I think there's a good chance. I think there's a chance. I know I wouldn't be surprised if David Sanders takes some visits next week.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. We still got some time on David Sanders. Up next is Michael Fasusi. Now, he has set a decision date. Let's start with Michael Fasusi. Who are the main players and which way you leaning?
Well, you have the Texas Longhorns, the Oklahoma Sooners, and the Texas A&M Aggies. Those are the programs I'm looking at closest from his top five. Right. Now, Michael Fasusi, in my opinion, when you move past the quarterbacks, is one of the highest demand NIL athletes in the country. When I hear some of the numbers behind the scenes for Michael Fasusi, these programs are very serious in getting this young man in the fold. So it'll be interesting to see how NIL shapes his recruitment down the stretch. It's certainly not the only element for him, as he's looking for a place that can develop him on and off the field, a place where he has good relationships with coaches. But I just want to emphasize how much of a priority he is to these programs with the NIL numbers going around on him. So maybe I give the edge to Texas as I talk to you right now, but the Aggies and Oklahoma are very much in the mix for Michael Fasusi, because he was very comfortable there on his many visits to campus. And I think all these programs are very serious about trying to land Michael Fasusi going into the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Fasusi, one of the hottest recruitments of the summer. It's going to come to an end, though, here soon. All right, Andrew Babalola, another monster offensive lineman. He's been taking his visits this summer, Steve. Where's he been? Who are the main contenders? And where do you think he's leaning?
Well, we just talked about the NIL component for Michael Fasusi and how sought after he is in that arena. I think he's got a chance to really be a big-time earner with, again, the numbers that you're hearing behind the scenes. Andrew Babalola, when you start talking about 5 stars, he might have been the last prospect to have an NIL discussion regarding what his potential worth is on the trail. Stanford and Michigan are the programs that I'm looking at closest with him, but certainly Missouri, Oklahoma, and Auburn are 3 others that he has a keen eye on. He's been trying to make a decision. I like where Stanford and the Maize and Blue currently stand, but we've been surprised before.
All right, we know Auburn got him on campus, Michigan involved. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, you've been pretty adamant that Stanford has been in the lead now for at least the last 4 to 6 weeks. All right.
I've also been saying to watch Michigan, though. I want to make sure the viewers know that it's not like I'm just sitting here on a Stanford island. That Michigan boat is hovering around, and he might jump on that bad boy too.
All right, now Josh Petty is ranked as an interior offensive lineman, but a lot of teams are recruiting him as an offensive tackle. But either way, he's got a ton of value in the trenches. Josh Petty right now, what's it looking like, Steve?
Yeah, and to your point, a couple schools even like him as a center. So he's got that 5-position type skill set with his length and ability to move and bend. Florida State's the on-3 RPM prediction. Georgia Tech, you might have to write them in, Josh.
We got a new entry here. Georgia
Tech.
In
Georgia Tech. You know, they're in the equation. Tennessee's got some family ties there. People around him that are Vols fans. And Ohio State is another program in the middle of it for Josh Petty as well. I think Florida State's style of play, the conference they're in, his sister being a freshman in Tallahassee right now, those are reasons why I like Florida State for Josh Petty. But Georgia Tech, man, they're in the middle of it for a few guys down the stretch, and that's another program that Chad Simmons and I are hearing to watch.
Yeah, that recruitment's heating up as he's going to make his decision this summer. Now, Malachi Goodman, one of the big men in the Northeast that is still available. He's out of New Jersey. Who's in it for Malachi Goodman? Which way are you leaning?
Well, we know Alabama's not in it. They're done at the position. They were one of the schools that he was looking at strongly. Penn State, there's some buzz around the Nittany Lions. They need to close these blue chippers here. They're on a tough stretch on the trail right now. They have a good class, but they're looking to find some momentum. Maybe they do with Malachi Goodman. Auburn is in the thick of it for him, and so is USC. Those are the 3 programs I'm hearing the most about with Malachi Goodman right now. A little more buzz maybe around Penn State.
Really?
But we've seen that with some other guys that have gone elsewhere. So that's what Auburn and USC are looking to have happen. And they've hosted Malachi Goodman a couple times apiece as well.
All right, we like Penn State right now for Malachi Goodman. And then we got a couple more here. Cortez Smith out of South Georgia and Juan Gaston also out of Georgia. Well, let's start with Cortez Smith. He's making his decision this Saturday, Steve. Who's in it?
Yeah, I like Georgia. The other programs he's high on, Georgia Tech, South Carolina, and Miami. But Georgia's looked like the team to beat for a long time. At my previous place of employment, I had a prediction in favor of Georgia, probably close to locking that in here on 3 as we're in decision week for him. But he's excited about all 4 of his finalists.
Okay, now Juan Gaston, he's made a bunch of visits. He's been high on a bunch of teams, but he's coming down to a decision. What do you think for Juan Gaston?
I like Georgia for Juan Gaston.
Really?
I think that they've poured a lot of time into this recruitment. My on-3 RPM is on the Bulldogs for him. He's going to commit in August. Now, Tennessee and Oregon are a couple programs that are doing what they can to change the momentum in that recruitment. But I like where Georgia stands for Juan Gaston. Their push for the number 1 class could include a couple of those 4-star linemen in Cortez and Juan. They're taking a big swing at David Sanders Jr. But while I think they maybe trail a little for him, we'll see what happens. They got a great chance to land Cortez and Juan.
All right. Well, Steve, I mean, we talked through it, and we gave the people a very simple roadmap to where the top uncommitted offensive lineman could end up. Now, we like Ohio State. We doubly like Georgia. We think Georgia could land 2 of these top remaining uncommitted targets. FSU could pick up 1, Stanford, Texas, and Penn State. The others will still be fighting to the finish to land one of these guys. We'll see what happens. But, hey, take a picture, write it down. This is probably how it's all going to happen.
Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of the Wiltfong Whip Around. Let's close the show talking a little NC State, Josh. He didn't make the whiteboard, but Isaac Souls Jr. is one of the most coveted centers in the country. He's going to announce his commitment on Thursday. He's down to Kentucky and NC State. I like the Wolfpack, Dave Dorn and company to land one of their top targets. And Michigan, they got the barbecue at the Big House coming next weekend. They just landed one of the fastest receivers in the country over the weekend in Philip Wright III from Destrehan, Louisiana. They beat LSU for him. They're going to have to hold off LSU for him. But he reminds me of Roman Wilson on the field. He's got an over 4.0 GPA off the field. He fits Michigan. Ron Bellamy, his future position coach, is from Louisiana. So Michigan, they're up to number 11 in the on-3 recruiting rankings, Josh. They're in the top 10 when you look at average ranking per commit. So the defending national champs recruiting at a high level. They now have Philip Wright committed. They have 4-star receiver Jacob Washington committed. And they're in the mix for 2 more on 300 pass catchers. And Andrew Marsh is going to be at the barbecue. He's from the Lone Star State. He's going to commit in August. Took his official visit in June. He's been to Ann Arbor like 6 or 7 times. Love Michigan there. And then you have Jerome Miles, one of the fastest receivers in the country. If they can add Jerome Miles and Philip Wright, that's an electric receiver room potentially. Miles is going to be at the barbecue at the Big House. He's a former Ole Miss commit. He's going to go to Penn State and LSU this fall. Utah and Texas A&M round out the top 5. So I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about Michigan and the barbecue next week. And to get all of that, please hit like and subscribe on the On3 Recruits channel to stay up on the latest on the biggest names and top programs on the trail. Thanks for tuning in. That's it for this episode of Wiltfong Whip Around. We'll see you on Thursday.